Yeah. All right, Tyler. X-Men.
We're doing a double shot of skidoo-doo-doo. Skidoo-doo-doo.
Yeah, excuse me, bartender.
Can I get a double shot of
skidoo-doo-doo.
skidoo-doo-doo?
Beep. Yeah. So this one.
Can I also get a couple of glasses of
That's you running to the bathroom.
Well, listen, I don't know if you know, but will shoot right through you. Take a shot of that, you got to pee right away. It's basically poison.
I feel like someone is like shot their radio, like taking a gun out and shot their radio like fucking Han Solo. And the first Star Wars, like, what is this shit? Just shoot it.
Fuck you. I didn't sign off for this skidly-doo-doo fucking bullshit. You know what?
Boring podcast anyway.
Thank God for looser gun laws so psychopaths like me can have them so I can shoot my radio for no reason.
I'm going to go teach a class.
I'm going to teach a class.
So anyway,
it's funny because it's true.
Speaking of teaching lessons, X-Men is here to teach us lessons.
All right, cool.
So episode 4 is Motendo / Life Death Part 1. Which I guess was kind of... So when we were talking, because we watched episode 5 together, and before...
As friends.
We held hands the whole time. As I thought it was kind of a weird episode where don't get me wrong, I love the episode. So the whole plot line of episode 4 is Jubilee kind of just has her own episode of her turning 18.
Yeah.
I think, turning 18. She's with her and Sunspot. And it's like, I think it's what's so fun about it is it so feels like an issue of a comic book.
Yep.
And it's so much like all of these episodes up until we'll get to episode 5, but I mean 1 and 2 kind of they all have the running themes of the show, but like it really did feel like a fun like transitionary issue of the comic book. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, when you except for like a very few instances, most of the time when Arcade showed up in any comic book, whether it be X-Men generally or he showed up in Spider-Man comic books and stuff. That was generally like
it's like a one-off. It's a one-off issue.
Yeah, I didn't want to say filler, but a one-off issue. That's like, hey, here's a story, and then we'll get back to our regularly scheduled events.
Yeah, it's like I hate to say transitional, but it is.
Here's the thing, though. There's a lot to unpack in this episode because Mojo plays the proxy of like these alt-right fucking terrible fans. I don't know if you noticed that, but everything he said was like, this is the way you're supposed to talk. This is the way, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that is exactly the kind of asshole who's like, Miles isn't really Spider-Man. I'm like, oh my God, this again? I can't believe we're still talking about this.
Yeah. I think it's...
But I like the episode, and I'm a huge fan of like Mojo and the X-Babies and stuff from the comic books. Long Shot, Shatterstar... another Liefeld creation, you fucking douche. Hey, what are 2 words that go together that sound cool and I can't draw feet? Shatter and Star. Cool, there's another fucking character from a stupid fucking comic book.
Shoots the fucking radio again. That's the 3rd one this week.
That is the 3rd goddamn radio, and I'm not listening to your podcast anymore. I can't so draw feet.
Oh, wait. Rob Liefeld was the one who shot it in the first place.
Oh, yeah.
He was Rob Liefeld. This goddamn... Leave me alone.
I have enough money that all I need to do is sit around and listen to people.
It's funny because I'm so...
Talk shit about me and then shoot my phone and buy a new phone.
You're the only one that has feelings about, like, any sort of feelings towards Rob Liefeld. I don't give a shit. I wasn't reading his comics growing up. Yeah.
Reading is a loose word because there was no plot or dialogue.
And the Deadpool that I know
there was, but it sucked. Yeah.
The Deadpool I know is like, that's a whole different thing.
You know, the evolved
I started
Deadpool.
with like Daniel Way. But anyway, back to X-Men 97.
The Deadpool.
What I loved about this episode and what I think is so genius about the Motendo episode is when they continue to...
The 16-bit fucking arcade bits were... Sorry.
when we talk about animation and we talk about like Spider-Verse and that, and like how them changing art styles for character, and so to see a whole episode where we do the 8-bit and 16-bit, so it looks like the super, like it even looked like a Genesis.
Well, those are the fucking arcade games. Like we had those big ass consoles or with cabinets with 4 or 5, sometimes even 6 like places, and these magnificently large screens.
The fact that it looked like that game was like fucking awesome. Like it looked like the arcade game. That was so cool.
Other game that was like that was like there was a TMNT game that was very similar,
Turtles
similar.
in Time was pretty popular.
Yeah,
but there was
one of the first, I think, games where you could go side to side but also up and down.
The Turtles one? Yeah, I think
so. And also X-Men. But up until then, I think it was a lot like Contra and Donkey Kong and stuff where you could just go side-scrolling.
Yeah.
It opened up the world a little more, and that was kind of like, it kind of made it tougher, actually, because sometimes you couldn't.
Well, and the side-scroller beat-em-ups were pretty popular around that time.
Of course.
So.
Well,
but the fact that it looked like the X-Men arcade game, and then
that was cool.
when she was getting hurt, like her health bar actually, like
and she found an extra life.
Right. It's showing you and telling you a story that only can work in animation. Just like when you read a comic book and you're like, this only works because of how this is like it's a comic book. It's like it and to see it done over and over again and look like Sonic and look like Mario and like all that stuff of that era, and and again, I love how committed X-Men 97 is committed to staying in the 90s, and everything is of that time. Sure, there's going to be the weird techno comic book technology shit in there, but for the most part, like video games and stuff, it would make sense that it looks like a Sega Genesis, and it looks like those 16-bit games and stuff like that. And again, it was a fun one-off story, and
I liked it.
It was really cool to have the original Jubilee's voice actors come back.
Yeah.
And have that moment, because we find out, it's Jubilee from a different dimension and it's like, I love how this show is just so committed to the weirdness of the X-Men mythos, because and we'll talk about it with episode 5.
Mojo himself is just, the whole thing is just weird. Carter and I, my brother, we actually read the original Long Shot miniseries written by Ann Nesenti and art by Art Adams. It was a 6-issue miniseries, and that was the introduction to Mojo, I think. Or either that or Mojo had appeared in like an X-Men annual at that point, maybe. But I believe Long Shot was the first appearance, that series was the first appearance of Mojo and all of that, because that's where he comes from. He's one of the... I can't remember what he ends up being, but Shatterstar is another one of those guys, like Long Shot.
Yeah. That's the thing, is it always X-Men always plays with time travel and dimensions and space and all these weird things, because it's a really weird soap opera, and I think that's what I really like about this show, and what I like about the X-Men, and what draws me to them is, like, I'm not saying the stories are soap opera level, like, bad and silly. I'm just saying, you know what I mean? It's like when I say pro wrestling is a soap opera.
Right.
I'm not saying it in a negative light. I'm just saying that, like, it has just a different weight to it and a different feel. Like, I don't think we talk enough about tone. Maybe we do, but I'm just saying, like, tone. Like, this show is consistent in its tone, where you can have the juxtaposition of these two episodes and these stories, where you can have the juxtaposition of the joyful, fun, crazy animation of Jubilee, and then the really crazy, like, what the fuck of episode 5. And before we get there, I just want to talk, what did you think of, so Life, Death, the way I'm looking at this, we have the Motendo story end, and then I feel like we're going to keep seeing Storm and Forge's story kind of behind everything. It's the B plot throughout the rest of the season. What did you think of this?
So this is great, because we've talked about this before, and I'm a huge, I grew up during this era, and we talked last week about ROM Space. Now I believe it's Hasbro who owns Micronauts and ROM and one other toy thing that they're trying to make, or there was news like a while ago they were trying to make their own like shared cinematic universe or whatever. Like, shut the fuck up. But the thing is here's the problem, or maybe
Yeah.
it's Mattel, but
No, it's Hasbro because
Okay.
they're talking about making like 45 movies or something.
right,
Like that.
shut up, dude. Yeah, and they own Transformers too. And I think G.I. Joe. But
The Transformers animated movie, the trailer should be coming soon. For
oh,
that.
cool. But the thing is ROM Space Knight was a huge part of the Marvel universe in throughout the 1980s, like the late 1970s to 87 or so, 88 maybe. And he appeared in every issue of every comic that was out there. The dire wraiths that he fought, these race of like these creatures that basically like they put their tongues into your brain and then sucked you out, and then you were dead, but they took on your form.
What the fuck?
Oh yeah, it was fucking crazy, dude. It's a whole long thing. We'll get into ROM some other time. The point is,
Well, yeah, I feel like we had to do a deep dive on ROM.
we will at some point, but that was like the thing, and that he had, I think, a series that lasted like 70, 80 issues, so of his own and everything. And what happened is the X-Men are somewhere and they're fighting alongside ROM, and Forge has a weapon that he's trying to use, I think, to destroy a dire wraith or something. This is what I recall, and if you have documentation or citations that I am wrong, then please let me know in the comments. I'm sure you will, you can douchebags. Anyway, isn't that nice? I'll just call our audience douchebags. Yeah, what do you got?
It's your fault. It's your fault. Be mad at yourself.
Okay. So, yeah, not really. I mean, I'm sorry. But anyway, so he accidentally shoots Storm and she loses her powers. So I really liked how they played with it and made it so that, like, he ends up admitting to her or revealing to her that he has a role in her losing her powers. So it's a different way of showing that Forge has not only a stake in wanting to help her get her powers back, but also that he's almost directly responsible for it. Because the gun that he shoots in the comics, he made it to shoot the dire wraiths or something. I can't remember what it was. It was supposed to be comparable to Rom's neutralizer. He had this extra spatial weapon. We'll get into that it's fucking crazy. Anyway. Right. So so that happens, and then Storm doesn't have her powers for years, okay? And then they go down to Dallas to fight this thing called the Adversary, and they die. So for like 5 years in the Marvel Universe, the X-Men are dead to the rest of the world in the Marvel Universe.
Yeah.
Nobody knows. They're in this little shitty place in the Outback, and there's this Aboriginal guy named Gateway who opens portals so they can travel other places. But you remember Pierce from Logan? The cyborg?
Yeah, the robot.
So
hand,
he used to be in the Hellfire Club in the comics. He was the White King, I think, or the White Bishop, I think. But he wasn't a mutant. He was just a dude, but he had all this cyborg shit, and he recruited all of these guys in the Marvel Universe who had been maimed by Wolverine. And he made them the Reavers, I think. Reavers sounds right. But they were kind of they were a big part of the X-Men for a while, but there was this one guy who had his entire lower half was tank treads, and they made an action figure of him back in the 90s or whatever. Anyway, but they owned that town in the Outback in Australia, and when the X-Men got there, they beat them and they lost, and then they lived there for a while. I know, trust me.
Where are you going? Are you talking about Forge?
I'm still talking about the X-Men, right?
Well,
X-Men are in the Outback. Storm still doesn't have her powers, but there's inklings that she's able to get them back somehow, right?
You took me on a ride, brother.
The comics are fucking crazy because then the Reavers come back and they attack the X-Men when they're unaware of it. So there's like a 3-issue arc where Wolverine is nailed to this fucking X in the desert in the Outback. And the Reavers are just fucking toying with him because they know they can't kill him.
Yeah.
So they're just fucking with him any way they can. And Gateway ends up saving him, whatever. And he ends up saving all of the X-Men in such a way that they go to different places. That's when Storm she reverts to a child And the next time we see her, she's in the care of this one weird dude named Gambit.
Oh, weird.
That is how the comics introduce Gambit. And by the way, she's a child, but she has her powers again. And it's never really explained. I think they probably do explain it at some point, but she went through some sort of fucking portal with the Aborigine dude when he helped them escape the Reavers. And that after that, like, that's when Professor X comes back and Colossus comes back. It's a whole long thing. I just like talking about the fucking lore, man.
We're going to talk about this some other time. I have an idea. We'll talk about it later.
The point is,
we'll talk about it off the air.
point
is way too much time. Let's move on.
Wow.
Let's move on to episode 5.
Why did it take too much time? That's not
because
nice.
I asked you about the episode, and then you went on this long thing about Storm. That particular arc, and we've talked. I'm pretty sure we talked about it before, but
okay.
No, we talked about the Magneto being turned into a baby, because somehow 2 X-Men characters have been turned into babies.
I'm pretty sure
on
there's
separate
more.
occasions. So anyway, episode 5 is mostly talking about Genosha being brought into the UN.
Mm-hmm.
So it's Magneto and Rogue. There's Gambit.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's it, right?
Yeah.
Magneto, Rogue, and Gambit. And
feel-
Madeline Pryor.
Yeah, but she was already there.
But yeah, I think that's it.
I mean, Nightcrawler to me is an X-Men.
Nightcrawler, yeah.
Yeah, but he's not an X-Men in this or whatever, technically.
It's mostly centered around those 3. And then the rest of the X-Men are back
We
at
see
the...
Sebastian Shaw. We see Emma Frost.
Yeah.
We see more.
Emma
Taggart,
Frost plays a big role in this.
Banshee.
But yeah, the rest of the X-Men are back at the X-Mansion. So while they're doing that, Jean Grey is kind of getting... Her memories are coming back with the Phoenix and all that stuff. And she shares a moment with Wolverine.
Logan.
And
God, he's not wearing his costume.
she kisses him, and then he like rebuffs her, which was like you were talking about it. You and I were talking about it, and I do love how they portrayed Logan in this show, and they continue to portray him. Whereas, like, he really is just, yes, he is that berserker rage guy that kills people sometimes.
Yeah.
But he is still someone who's lived for a long time. And he's at one point, he says in this conversation, I've looked like this for hundreds of years. Like, so he's an adult. And so he knows in this situation, it's like, no, you just made a mistake and that's it. Like, you're Jean Grey, he's Scott, you're together.
Listen,
like,
as much as I want to just take you to Pound Town, it just ain't right.
He's my friend. It's not cool. And that's another thing, too. It also continues that storyline. Because I love the relationship between Cyclops and Wolverine, where it is like a friendly rivalry. Like, in the show, he chops off the roof of his car at one point. And he goes, tell him I made him a convertible. Because it was after Morph died. But he also does. He just, like, fucking punches him in the gut at one point. So, I mean, like, it's a brotherly love, I think. But anyway,
I don't know how to classify their.
So, and Genosha, like, it's a really, like, this is what I mean by it's a soap opera. So, the Jean and Logan stuff, and, like, the romance and the love triangles, and and again, I'm not saying it in a negative way. That's why I love it. It's because it is superhero soap opera, and I'm into that.
We talked about this off the air, and one of the things about, like, okay, like, if you're going to be one of those nerds, and I totally am, how can Cyclops flat glasses like
We're not going. Stop. We're not going down this road.
I know I'm not, but you've already stopped me once.
You went too long on this Storm thing.
I was going to go into how it lends that character pathos that he has to wear the glasses.
It adds to him,
but it's stupid anyway. But that's the thing with Rogue is that it lends itself to to having that adds pathos to the character, so that when she's trying to decide between Gambit and Magneto, we can tell why. She can touch this guy, she can't touch this other guy, even though she loves him more.
Well, and that whole triangle.
But then she ends up rebuffing Magneto anyway, and it doesn't really fucking matter, does it? Later, dude.
Well, no, because it's what Gambit said.
Later,
like,
green jeans.
which is the truth about any romantic relationship.
I
They're
wouldn't know.
like you know, being affectionate and physical with someone is a part of it. But you have to really love and care for that other person to be that vulnerable, you know? And Rogue, as much as it was nice to have a dance and feel someone else's touch and be kissed and felt, it's like that's not enough because you're still Magneto. So we get that weird backstory in this episode. I think it was handled fine. I like that they are moving away from it. I like that Rogue made that decision not to go down that path. So yeah, that scene. So before that, she sees Gambit. He's all dressed up for the gala for the big event they're going to, and she has the conversation with him and explains this history between her and Eric. And
It's a retelling of like the Savage Land stuff from early Jim Lee X-Men.
Yeah,
and when he basically did what no other artist had done before, which was, hey, I don't know if you guys know this, but Rogue is fucking hot. Here she is in a Savage Land bikini. What?
Sales?
I mean, listen,
Yeah.
I'm 12 and 13 at this point, so yeah, I noticed. I'm sorry, I did.
It awoken something. I mean, puberty.
As ridiculous and unreal as it is, it still depicts a real form of a human being that is just really hyper fucking
Yeah, so we get that backstory, and then she pretty much relates to Gambit. Like, I understand that your heart's for me, but I can't feel your heart. I can't feel you. And again, absolutely, physicality is a part of a relationship, and I do think being intimate with someone, whatever way that might be, is an important part of the relationship. So I do you do understand her struggle. It's like, I want to be able to kiss you and hold you, and I can't do that, And fuck. I was waiting. I was like, how can I be the most adult about this and then turn it into
Remy,
being
I want you to take me to Pound Town, but I know you can't because you'll die.
But then he's got to be thinking like, but think of the fucking thrust I could put in there. Oh, I'm sorry, everybody. Bonk, horny police.
Is that like a super? Okay, so see, in the comics, I mean, I don't know. Was it? I mean, in the comics, it was kind of implied that Gambit had some sort of luck type of power, or something, where on occasion he was able to touch Rogue and not be affected by her powers, or. I mean, I know they did it in the comics. I know that. I don't know how.
Was Domino the luck thing?
Huh?
Wasn't Domino the luck thing?
Okay. You tell me what.
We're moving on.
Tell me what Gambit's powers are.
I don't know.
Energy. Fucking exactly.
Thing.
And by the way, hey, Channing Tatum, we really need to worry about that motherfucker. How long has he been trying to do a Gambit movie? That character is so fucking cool, man.
Hey. Gambit's fucking incredible in this episode.
Oh,
in this episode, he's a fucking badass.
But
can we move to that? Can we get to that, please? Can we get to that?
No Gambit movie.
So we're at the gala, we're at the thing. They're Magneto and Rogue are lifting in the air, dancing, kissing, holding, whatever. And then on the outside,
holding body parts.
Madeline Pryor's on the outside, and then Cable jumps through a portal, lands there, sees her outside, and he goes, "Cut the music, cut the music!" He's like screaming, and I'm sitting there watching it with you.
He's on his way.
I'm sitting there watching it with you, and I'm thinking, that's fucking Cable.
Who the fuck is that? He's a man out of time. Who the fuck is that? He likes to fight crime. Who the fuck is that? He ain't got the cool. Who the fuck is that? But he ain't a fool. It's fucking Cable.
It's fucking Cable.
What's that from?
The Deadpool game. I've been sitting on that joke for years. I'm like, somehow I'm going to incorporate that into the show.
Well, let's do it. That's cool.
I did just now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, are we talking again?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
So anyway, Cable shows up, which we watched this
That's
together.
impressive.
It blew my mind. I was
Well,
like,
okay,
whoa.
so we hear the voice like earlier than that. Like we hear the voice of Cable like cut the music and shut the music off, and he's coming, and then he's actually there, and yeah, Madeline realizes looking into his eyes that he's Nathan.
Yeah.
And then
And he says, he starts the backslide by one
Body
start,
slide.
or body slide by one starts. Which why I know about that is because, and I want to read it for the show one day. I have Cable and Deadpool. The Fabian, I can't remember his last name.
Niceza.
Yeah.
Niceza.
Yeah.
Niceza? Man.
It was his run.
He wrote a lot of the
So,
comics in the 90s.
Yeah, I think it was like 60 issues or something like that. Like it was for a while. He did a Cable Deadpool team up book. So it was Cable and Deadpool, and they are tied to each other. So when they want to teleport to each other, they say body slide by two. So like I was like, I know what's going on here because it's he teleports and time travels, and like the fucking animation when he gets pulled back through the portal was cool as shit, dude.
Yeah.
And you and I were talking about it. The animation in this show continues to just be excellent, man.
I know that you've talked about it before where there's a couple of frames or whatever. I really haven't.
The first couple episodes,
right,
I
and
noticed
it was
but
minimal shit that
Yeah,
it
yeah.
was like when this lip sync was off or whatever.
Yeah.
But I've been nothing but I remember the original show. There were a lot of instances where I was like, the animation isn't super great. It
that's
wasn't
90s.
It wasn't bad, but yeah, they clearly made a commitment to like we want to make this, we want to make this consistent. We want to have a consistent level of animation.
True continuation of that show.
Yeah, and but then we're seeing this, and then he's like, "I'm so sorry, Mom," and then all of a sudden, this gigantic fucking like insect fucking 3-headed master mold shows up. That's
my
just
gosh,
ginormous.
dude. It's
Just dropping regular
green
sentinels
bombs
all over the place.
I was
Yeah.
like, what the
Whoa!
I remember we were sitting there. Most of this like last like half of this episode, this
Yeah.
whole thing,
Like 10
my
minutes.
mouth was agape because I'm like, what the fuck is happening?
I kept waiting for something to like be like, okay, wake up and like
So,
what happened?
also,
but it just keeps going.
So before all this too, Jean and Madeline have
Oh,
a
yeah, yeah,
moment
yeah,
where
yeah.
Emma Frost has been fucking with their heads, and Jean gets upset. Which like, fuck off, Jean. You kissed Logan a little bit ago, and then you're gonna get mad at Scott for kissing Madeline because he's confused because he loves both of you. I don't know. I just wanted to talk about that a little bit because this next part is, dude, I was depressed by the end of this episode.
Sad.
I was sad, dude. I was fucking.
It's
So the master mold things come up. The green shit's everywhere. They're taking out a bunch of like everybody's
gone,
screaming.
just gone, man.
They're burning Genosha to the ground. Like it's crazy, and like Nightcrawler dies.
No,
She's trying to
Nightcrawler survives at the end.
He did.
He's
teleport out.
He's one of the ones that survives it because remember, like they're about to blow up their building or whatever. That's when Gambit does what he does to basically destroy the Master Mold.
Yeah.
And at the end of the episode, I thought the same thing. They were in the same proximity, but at the end of the episode, they do show Nightcrawler. He's looking on while Rogue is.
This is what I mean by soap opera. So like a superhero soap opera, and why I love it so much. So when you have those moments of like, I really feel bad for Gambit because he clearly loves Rogue and they can't be together.
Right.
And to see her kiss Eric and have that moment, and then
Immediately just
in
like,
that same episode, just a few moments later, we have Cable showing up, all this fucking craziness. And when this is happening, you hear the theme throughout. Like there's one where when Nightcrawler goes down and you think he might be dead, and it's like really like somber, and then it plays at different points. But like, man, it was crazy, and it's like it's so weird. And again, what's so good about it is you have all these great character moments in the like soap opera stuff where I was like, oh, this is going to be like a little bit of a slower episode, and I kind of appreciate that. And then, holy fuck, all that stuff happens in the end. It's so good, dude. Like I was legitimate, like I wasn't tearing up or anything, but
No,
I was
sad.
it hurt, man. I was like
because
legitimately.
it ends the episode with her saying, "I can't feel you."
I can't fucking Jesus, man.
And we
I
know
can't feel
Magneto's
you.
probably dead.
And Magneto you finally see that redemption when he talks to Leech the last time. And he dies. And then right after that, Omega threat eliminated. I'm like, fuck. And I'm this whole time I'm like, what is going on? And all this stuff's happening. But like when Rogue and Gambit show up together and the music's playing, I'm like, this is what I love about superheroes. And you talk about pathos and like mythos. That's what I love about it. And I think there's just so much care being put into the show, dude. There's so much passion. They got to get Bo DeMeo back because, like, I don't know what happened, but they got to get him back.
Well, the tragic hero is so much better than the redeemed hero. I mean, it's so much more interesting
because everybody deals with pain and loss and suffering.
It's more relatable, yeah. And I mean, I still say, like I said, I kept waiting for for it to end and then somebody waking up like, what happened,
Yeah.
But it just kept going and just fucking blew my mind. And of course they're looking on at the end.
Oh
everybody,
my God, when they
everybody
cut
at
back
the
to
school,
the mansion. That's what I mean. It's in all the best ways. It is a superhero soap opera, and that's why I love it so much.
What I was
going to
say is
it's just so good. It's so good.
We've talked about, and I've gone in depth about a lot of the X-Men stuff, but because I love it. But
I am a converted X fan.
Well,
it's been a while. Like I finally started reading some things and catching up on some things, and
some of those. Yeah,
I'm learning to really love. Like I'm falling in love with these characters, and I see why people have loved these characters for so long.
Well, I'll never forget these storylines because I was during my formative years. That's what they call them.
Can I dangle you a carrot?
No,
please.
What?
I want to talk about all this later.
Well, let me finish.
I want to talk about this after the show.
Well, that's fine. But I got what I was saying is,
private. You don't need to hear this shit.
All right, Jesse. So when adaptations, and this is why I love this adaptation particularly, is you have an original work where a writer goes, okay, I'm going from point A, and then they go to B, C, D, and on down the line because that's the way you read it. Claremont did that with all this stuff, and then the writers after him and everything. I won't call Jim Lee a writer. Sorry.
Wow.
Yikes. A plotter? Sure.
Hey, make fun of Rob Liefeld all you want, but you don't fucking say shit about Jim Lee.
I'll give him plotter, but anyway, sure.
Get you your goddamn point.
Yeah. So, but the great thing about adaptations is somebody comes in and they go, okay, I'm going to go from point A to point 4, and then point 2, and then point B, and then point D, and they all go to this. They get to the same place in the story at the end, but the way they get to that story, the way we were talking about Storm and Forge, and how she loses it in the comics versus how she loses it in the show, they go from. Claremont, did that, but the writers of the show were like, hey, we can still do that, but we just have to kind of finagle it so that it fits our story, right?
Yeah.
And I really like that about this adaptation. And so far, I've been very, very good at telling, like, okay, like, what storyline is this? Because, there's a good 20-year chunk of, like, X stuff that I missed, but at the same time, I know enough about it now.
Yeah.
That yeah. So, but this one, man, at the end of this episode, I do remember that Genosha at one point, like, was an apartheid nation, and all mutants were treated as others. They were bad. Like, they were like,
and there was a bunch of stuff with like Mr. Sinister and Genosha.
But then it became
like kind of like a sanctuary.
Yeah. So
now that's Krakoa, but now that's gone.
Well, Krakoa was something else, but Genosha was like obliterated at one point or something. But that was during my kind of gap. So I don't know what storyline they're using or doing, but again,
I have
well done telling it.
I have no fucking idea what they're gonna do in episode 6, and I don't know. My guess is they're gonna do stuff with Bishop and. Oh my God, are you gonna tell me we're gonna get a future like an episode of Bishop and Cable? In the future?
thought they were doing. You said I remember when everything started on the episode, like that we're talking about, like the what the fuck. And you said I remember exactly, not exactly, but you said something like, "Oh, they're gonna do the and you didn't finish. What were you thinking about?
Well,
Executioner's song or? Because I think that's what it's
No,
called when
I'm
they
trying to
blow
figure out
up
because-
Genosha. That was when I stopped reading around that time.
I'd have to reread it, but I'm pretty sure that Cable and Deadpool stuff is like, they are on Genosha, like but I think that's like when Genosha is kind of like a sanctuary or something.
Okay.
But I thought something like that, but then I also thought like this next episode is gonna be Bishop and Cable, and they're gonna be constantly coming back to that point and trying to fix it and stop it. And save it, and maybe I don't know.
I hope so.
Maybe there's an incursion. Maybe they're gonna play with secret wards and incursions and stuff, or maybe this is it. Maybe this is it.
This is episode 5.
Yeah,
no, we got 3 more, right?
Yeah.
Do we even know how many there are? Did we figure that
I think
out?
there's 8. There's 8.
Did we look it up?
Yeah, there's 8. I'm pretty positive.
Is there going to be a season 2?
Yeah. No, Disney hasn't said anything.
Off panel, off topic with Jake and Tyler.